We have saved the best for last. I know everybody's been great today, but really we have a fantastic presentation for you now by a woman who is really taking the events management world by storm. A lot of you probably know her, Allie Magyar. She is the CEO of Hubb, a software company that she founded a few years ago to streamline event management. She bootstrapped the company, and then in 2016, Elevate Capital co-led a Series A round of $3 million with OVF, Thai Angels, Portland Seed Fund, then Venture Fund, and Seattle Angels that has propelled her company into quite high growth at this point. Allie's going to be talking a little bit more in our entrepreneurial spotlight. She will talk about the struggles and really some of the challenges of balancing being a CEO at the same time as managing the growth and pursuing this next round of funding. So again, we saved the best for last today with Allie.
Thank you. Well, that's a great welcome. I know that I am the last thing between you and happy hour, so I promise there is alcohol after my presentation. But I really am honored to be here today and to be a part of a community that believes so strongly in diversity and inclusion. So before we start, I'm going to ask two questions. I'm sure most of you have heard a variation on this question if you're involved in startups. But the first one is, all startups fail. So can you tell me with 100% certainty why you are not going to fail? Versus the second question, which is, you're scaling really well right now. We believe in you. Tell us about your big picture vision and your goals and how you're going to continue to scale and take the world by storm. So just keep those in the back of your mind and we'll come back to them a little bit later. First, a few introductions. So my name is Allie Magyar. I'm founder and CEO of Hubb. Now, obviously, I'm a woman, but I don't think about that on a day-to-day basis. What I think about is how to keep the rails on at Hubb. And anyone that's involved in a startup knows that waking up every day, you have a different challenge ahead of you. You want to grab the bull by its horns and just try to steer it in the right direction. Prior to founding Hubb, I was CEO of an experiential agency that planned and managed some of the world's largest technology conferences for Fortune 50 customers. You can go ahead and advance the slides now. Thanks. And as a part of that role, a lot of you have heard me speak about the meetings industry and how difficult the meeting industry is because of the volume of information that is on top of meeting planners. Now, meeting planning is one of the top 5 most stressful jobs in the United States. And it's ranked that by USA Today every year. And as a meeting planner, I would start my day, and when I started my career, technology consisted of fax machines. That was my technology. And it was better than snail mail, so as people were registering for events, I'd have to grab information off the fax machine and put it into an Excel spreadsheet. And our industry evolved a little bit, but not very much. Excel spreadsheets and email were the de facto method of communicating. And as CEO of an agency and needing to plan larger and larger events and be able to scale my team, I needed a way to be able to do that. So I decided to build technology. And I built that technology at first within my agency. And as they started to use it, they realized the power of having a single source of truth when it comes to event management, to be able to collect and manage and market information about the back end side and make a better experience for attendees. So as they saw the time savings and as I saw the marketing that was going behind these events and increasing the experiences, I knew that I wanted to take the product to market. But as a services CEO, I had absolutely no idea what that meant. So how does a person with absolutely no connections, I had been working in one of the top 5 most stressful industries that there was, I had been working 20 plus hours a day and hadn't had time to raise my head above to figure out who I needed to talk to or who could help me along this journey. And as a part of that, I didn't have any formal education. So I didn't have an MBA. I actually went to college for 1 quarter. I was an English and a music major and a concert flautist, really random fact about me. But I very quickly decided that that was not for me. I also didn't have any SaaS experience. Actually, I didn't even know what the word SaaS meant at the time. I knew how to scale a services organization. I had a passion for our industry. I had a passion for people. But I also didn't have any other early stage entrepreneurs that were able to help me in my journey or help to guide me on what I should do next. So today I'm going to share a little bit about that journey of how we went from an idea within our company to then going and winning first place among several pitch competitions and successfully doing several rounds of funding. And not only the best practices around how we did that, but also some of the tips and the tricks that I've found that have helped me as a woman entrepreneur and a woman founder in the uphill battle that we face when it comes to funding. So I'm going to start with something my dad told me growing up. He said, "Allie, everything you do is all about who you know." And I used to roll my eyes and say, "Yeah, Dad, you know everyone, yeah. But as I've gotten older, I've realized the power of having the right community around you. Now, what I talked about earlier of community, I didn't have one at the point in time where I wanted to take Hubb to market. So I had to work with what I had in front of me. And what I had in front of me was my family, my baby sister, Sarah. She had moved to San Francisco just a couple of years earlier. And in that process, she knew people that were involved in the startup world. And so I asked her to introduce me to 5 people that were in her network that I could talk to. And I was terrified. I didn't know what to ask in that meeting. I didn't know what type of terms I should be talking about. But I committed to being very vulnerable in that meeting and to be willing to ask the hard questions, to put myself out there, to tell them about my product and my idea, and be able to get their feedback. Not just, "Oh, great presentation, pat on the back," real feedback. So when they said, "Yes, this makes sense, it's something you should pursue," I would ask them, "Why? What specifically about this is making it a good deal, and where do I go to continue to build on this?" And at the end of every conversation, I would end up asking each of them to introduce me to 5 people in their network. And 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 ends up being a very, very big community of people, and a wide, broad variety of different backgrounds and perspectives that actually introduced me to people here in the Northwest that are still on the journey with me today. So luckily, things have changed quite a bit over the years, especially here in Oregon, and we are really fortunate to have a wide variety of support groups that allow us to focus on issues like diversity and inclusion, but also investment groups that care so much about the entrepreneurs, not just the business, although that's a great side effect, but about the entrepreneurs and helping them in their journey, from education to networking to meetups. So there's a wide variety of opportunities that we can take advantage of here regionally. But in addition to the regional assets that we have, we also have national assets. So I just returned from Microsoft Ignite and Microsoft Envision, which is their largest customer and partner conference that they have every year. There was about 30,000 people there. Now, this was a really rewarding experience for me, not only because Hubb was the software that was being used to manage that entire event, one of the largest in the world, but also because I had planned and managed those events in my career. And this was the first time I was attending as a business decision maker. And being there as a woman and seeing how the conversation is changing, how the focus is on the value of diversity and inclusion, not only from the content that they're presenting, but also from the opportunities and experiences that they're putting into place. So these are some photos from their Diversity and Inclusion Lounge, an area that they specifically set aside for women and minorities to come to be able to network with each other, have one-on-one and group meetings. They had this super cool diversity superpower pin that everyone wanted. They went real quick. But they also welcomed everyone to join their Microsoft Tech community. It's open to anyone. And as a part of that tech community, they're offering mentor and mentee programs. So if you have a specialty that you know you can help someone with, or if you want to be mentored in a specific area, you're able to apply and be matched up, and Microsoft helps to facilitate that learning and that education and that relationship. So not only do we have the regional resources that are so amazing here locally, but we also have the national stage that is starting to change the conversation. So my lessons when it comes to community is that it's never too early. When I started, I wish I had started 5 years ago. It's going to be the best time you potentially invest because you're going to find a group of people that can help you and also share the pain and support you through the tough road ahead. I have a daughter, and she's 11 years old, and my proudest moment is walking in and she's watching Shark Tank and she's yelling, "That's too much equity!" And I knew that there was something going right in how she's growing up and the message that she's hearing. She watches TED Talks. She's absolutely in love with Wildfang, and she is a self-proclaimed feminist at 11 years old. So we need to change that conversation and give the community from the very beginning. And I think it's also important to be aggressive to find the right mentors for you. Today on the panel, we heard a lot about mentorship and how to approach that and the value of mentorship. And I remember being terrified. Nitin had introduced me to Monica from Zapproved, and she is an incredible role model as a woman and as a minority entrepreneur. And we set up coffee together. And I was incredibly nervous for that situation. But what I found is it's all about building the relationships. If you really value what someone has done and you're able to express to them what you so admire and what you want to learn from that person, you'd be surprised at how receptive people are. So be aggressive and find the mentors that are right for you. Now, the second tenet that I always go on is pitch, pitch, and pitch again. And I'm sure I love to pitch, I love to speak, and I'm sure there's a lot of you in the audience that sounds like the worst thing in the world is to get up on stage. And I understand that pitching can be scary. It's a good skill for a founder or a CEO to have. But in addition to pitching, there is so much more value in terms of the public speaking outside of that. For example, being able to condense your entire story into 10 slides. The succinctness that you need to be able to tell your value proposition and exactly what you're measuring and why you're successful. And the ability to go and talk with people, to hear their feedback, to hear their questions, to hear a wide variety of perspectives from all different industries and all different backgrounds. As a part of the Northwest, again, we're very lucky to be in an organization that has a wide variety of pitch competitions that you can compete in. And it doesn't even matter if you don't make it past a round, because it's all about that practice and practice and practice and the confidence that comes alongside of that. So my story with pitching started after I had started talking to this 5x5x5 community. I was on a plane, and I read about the Seattle Angel Conference. And I emailed them because the application deadline was the next day. And I said, hey, I'm really interested in participating. And they emailed me back, and they said, well, we don't think you're going to be able to get everything in on time because the deadline's tomorrow. And I replied, and I told them they didn't know my background in events and my obsession with data. We'd be okay. And that is one of the best things that I did, because we went on to compete in the Seattle Angel Conference and win first place. And that helped propel my story. But as a part of that, I showed up, and there was a wide variety of entrepreneurs that were there. And I got to hear them pitch. I got to hear their stories. I got to see their slides and learn how this was happening. So every round that it kept going down and down, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute, it helps you to really understand how to succinctly tell your story and what you can learn from others. Now, after that, about 6 months later, we went on to raise $3.7 million as a part of our Series A after winning both the Seattle Angel Conference and the Ben Venture Conference. So our experience really got kicked off in that process and our ability to tell the story. And we were also supported by so much of the local entrepreneur community and the investment community. So our Series A was all local investors. And as a part of that, our local investors are committed to diversity and inclusion. Elevate Capital, Oregon Venture Fund, Portland Seed Fund, and Cascade Angels all have amazing statistics. And the fact that they have statistics means they're measuring it. And the fact that they're measuring it means that they have a dedication towards being inclusive and investing in the right ways and making sure that capital is available to all. So my lessons learned is that the story always evolves. What I pitched when I first started talking to those first people from my sister, to what I said at the Seattle Angel Conference, to how I pitched at the Ben Venture Conference, and to how I've been pitching over the last 6 months as we've gone to raise our next round of funding, the story has continually changed. And it's also important to know your audience. Who are you speaking to? What do they care about? How will they know that the momentum is there? One of the things that happened to me a couple of months ago is I was on site at Madrona, and they don't know I'm going to tell this story, so they might be a little embarrassed about it later, but I went and pitched. And while I was in that conversation, I thought that it had gone really well. And afterwards, one of their partners pulled me aside, and she asked me to come to her office. So I did, and she told me that I was a great entrepreneur. She thought I had a great product. But then she spent 45 minutes ripping apart every single slide that I had. And afterwards gave me a hug, and I absolutely adore her for it. And it's because I didn't know my audience. I had been used to pitching to angels. And it's very different when you go to pitch to venture capital. So it is so important to understand your audience and know how to present the information in a compelling way. And the other thing about pitching that is actually the most valuable is the art of positivity. As an entrepreneur, we wake up, we're fixing, plugging gaps and holes. It's hard, it's depressing sometimes, and you can get caught up in the momentum of that every single day. But when you're pitching, you're focusing on the good. You're focusing on all of the metrics that you're blowing out of the water. You're focusing on why your team rocks. You're focusing on why your company's going to succeed. And if you're saying that every single day and you're believing it and you're creating the story for yourself, you're speaking yourself into existence. And that positivity goes into every element of your business. So I'm going to take us back to the original 2 questions that I had asked earlier. Now, when I was pitching, I got asked early on in Seattle that same question. Startups fail, you're going to fail, tell us why you're not going to. So I got pretty good at answering the question and telling people exactly why I was not going to fail. A very preventative measure type of question and answer. This is why I'm not going to fail. Now, it was a breath of fresh air for me to come into the Oregon Venture Fund, and the first thing they said in the giant meeting was, "We are so impressed with you. You've done a great job of scaling this company so far. Can you share with us what your big picture vision and goals are and how you're going to get there?" Now, they very likely got the same type of answers. I mean, whatever you're going to do to not fail is the same things that will help you to succeed. But there's a very subtle difference, and that difference is important. Harvard did a study that monitors entrepreneurs' interactions with investors. And as a part of that study, they found that women were typically asked preventative type questions. You're going to fail. Tell us why you're not going to. So just like me, they answer and they tell all the reasons why they're not going to fail. But it's very preventative. It's not big picture. It's not bringing them along in the journey. Versus the way that the questions were posed to men with a promotion-based question, they got promotion-based answers. It was, here's the big picture. Here's the vision. This is where we're going. Get excited. Get on the boat. And so this next slide will share why this is an unconscious bias and why how we communicate and how the conversation happens matters. Entrepreneurs that were asked the prevention-focused questions and answered in the way of, I'm not going to fail here, raised a little over $500,000. The people that were asked the promotion-focused questions and that answered with the big picture and the vision went on to raise almost $8 million. I'd say there's proof there that there is a bias and that the conversation matters. So to me, that says, how can we win against all odds? I look at that as a challenge. How do I take it? Because I know I'm going to get asked these prevention-type questions. So how do I turn my answers into promotion-based answers? When I get asked the failure questions, I'm going to talk big picture. I'm going to talk strategy. And I'm going to change the conversation by how I respond and take ownership. And part of that is the experience that we've been talking about. It's having the right community. It's having the mentors and the people around you that help support you. It's the practice and your pitching and the positivity. But a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you also have to work on yourself. There's intrinsic work that needs to happen for you to have that confidence, and that confidence in the value that you bring. And I think this is where a strong sense of self comes into play. And I'm sure everyone in this room is on a never-ending journey of what your sense of self means, and it changes and it evolves over time. But this is important to focus on. I read Brené Brown, watch her videos, I learn about authentic leadership, vulnerability, and how I can bring that into my day-to-day so that I'm confident in those meetings. Because when I'm in those meetings and I end up having conversations, for example, I pitched in Seattle and I was really excited to get off the stage and to be able to get the questions answered and talk about the business strategy that was happening. And a gentleman came up to me got very much in the physical space and very aggressively proceeded to argue with me for 20 minutes about how I was pronouncing my last name wrong. Why that matters and how that relates to my pitch, I will never know. Or sitting in a boardroom with a VC and accidentally being called hun. Or being told that I have a nice lifestyle business when I'm outperforming every single one of their portfolio companies and I know what I'm doing. These are just a couple of examples of situations that as an entrepreneur, and especially as a minority entrepreneur, that you can face. And every single one of those things can chip away at your confidence. So it's important that your strong sense of self applies. And it's also important that this conversation, like I mentioned earlier, starts young. So I mentioned my daughter, who's 11. Well, a couple of years prior to her age, I got told all the time that I was too bossy. I'm sure you can probably assume, like, I've been that way most of my life. But instead of telling me that I was too bossy, maybe they should have recognized the value that was there. Because I went on to be class president from 7th grade all the way through senior year. I managed all of our finances. We went on awesome trips. I did all sorts of things that were too bossy and trying to help and lead. And the only time that that was recognized is when I started to play sports and I was captain of the basketball team or the volleyball team. And then at that point in time, I became one of the guys, and then it wasn't too bossy. It was amazing because the leadership was performing results and we were winning games. So I challenge us to think about changing the conversation so that that strong sense of self actually starts with our young generation and that they're not faced with these types of issues as they continue to grow up. And that starts by us viewing ourselves as equals. I've said it a few times today, but I can't control what anyone else thinks or says. I can only control what I do. And so I want to show up. I want to show up as an equal. And so when I'm sitting at the table and I'm being told, well, we know that typically valuations are X to X range, but we're only comfortable giving you half that. That's sort of what we're offering you right now. I have to look at that and say, no, I am an equal. Tell me exactly why. Nitin's been on the end of that, a lot of that conversation. He's taken quite a few phone calls from me when I'm like, what the hell is going on? So being in those situations, I ask the question, okay, well, if that's industry standard, why am I anything less than industry standard? Because here's my numbers, here's my value, here's how I'm performing. Because it's not fair for you not to view me as an equal when I know that I am. And part of that is the mentality of sticking to your guns. It is really easy as an entrepreneur, and especially in a fast-growing startup, to have a lot of anxiety around knowing that the market opportunity is right now, and knowing that you could bootstrap, but that you want the ability to grow at a much faster scale. So the anxiety is there of, well, is this good enough? But I encourage you to stick to your guns. And as a part of that, find your tribe. So throughout the last 6 months, I've talked to a variety of venture capital and private equity. And in every situation, I have not been able to find my tribe until recently. And that's because there wasn't cultural alignment. They didn't believe in the same things that I believe in terms of how we show up every day and we bring our whole selves to work. There is no work-life balance, it's just life. And we want to be successful in all assets. Or they didn't believe in how we would grow. They wanted us to spend money irresponsibly and had way too high of metrics over the next 6 to 9 months that I knew that we couldn't meet. So it's really important that by sticking to your guns and finding your tribe, it's just as important as finding one of a key hire. You're going to be working hand in hand with these people for the foreseeable future. And so you want to make sure that you find your tribe. And for me, I found my tribe when the first thing out of their mouths were, we believe in events and we believe in you. What a powerful statement to start the conversation with. So I see this as an uphill battle. I don't know how my story relates to other women or other minority entrepreneurs, but I do know that there's some facts. 38% of businesses are owned by women, but yet only 2% of capital goes to those businesses. And while we're trying to raise capital, Those people that are sitting behind the partner seats, only 11% of them are women. So that makes it a really tough uphill battle. But as a part of that, there are also studies that show that female-led companies are outperforming the male-led companies because of how we approach business, how we approach communication, how we approach work, a lot of the things that we heard on the panels earlier today. So I look at this, and while it's an uphill battle, I see that the world is our oyster. I choose the positivity. I see this as an opportunity for us to prove them wrong, and an opportunity for us to change the conversation, and an opportunity for us all to succeed and be equal. So the path forward, it is about us. It's about the people in the room. And I say that we say challenge accepted, because together, our voice can create a powerful disruption, just like any other company, that allows us to focus on the value of diversity and inclusion in every single company. Thank you guys for the time today.